My name is Sid Deverent, and I'm here with my colleagues Mary Wegmann and Braith Birchall. Today we'll be presenting about our library's annual subscription review procedure and some of the work we have done recently to update and streamline that process. Mary, Braith, and I work in the library at Western Washington University, a public university located in Bellingham, Washington. Full-time equivalent enrollment at Western in academic year 2025 was around 13,600 students, about 13,000 of which were undergraduates. Most of Western's graduate students are enrolled in master's programs, with the exception of 2 professional doctoral programs. The library is organized into 3 divisions, each of which has multiple units. There's the Teaching and Learning Division, which includes the Subject Liaison Librarians, Research and Writing Studio, and Tutoring Center. There's the Collection Services Division, which Mary Braith and I work in, which includes the Collection Management and Assessment Unit, or CMA, Circulation and Reserves, Resource Access, and Cataloging and Metadata. And there is the Archives and Special Collections Division, which includes the University Archives, the Center for Pacific Northwest Studies, and Special Collections. Much of the library's work also takes place in cross-division groups and committees. The Scholarly Resources Group, which conducts the library's annual subscription review, is comprised of personnel from all 3 divisions. This group plays a critical role in decision-making processes for collection development and strategy. Western Libraries conducts an annual review of its subscription portfolio to ensure the resource allocations align with our users' needs. The procedure for routine subscription review was first developed in fiscal year 2020 and then refined in fiscal year 2021. This process was developed to provide a structured and consistent method for evaluating subscriptions using a variety of metrics and for incorporating stakeholder feedback into the final decision-making process. The process began at the beginning of the fiscal year with the preparation of quantitative and qualitative subscription data. That data was then used to calculate a score for each subscription and prepare a list of potential cuts or additions. The library's Scholarly Resources Group collaborated to refine this list before sharing it with the campus community. Following this feedback period, Collection Services leadership would use the subscription scores, Scholarly Resources Group consultations, and campus input to make final decisions about subscriptions to cut or add. There were 4 general categories of criteria used to calculate subscription scores. To evaluate return on investment, we would consider metrics like cost per use, average annual price increases, and whether the content was available through other subscriptions or interlibrary loan. We considered criteria related to the usability of resources, including whether the resource is indexed in ALMA's Central Discovery Index, if the resource has limits on the number of concurrent users, and any DRM restrictions. To assess how well a resource supported Western's academic programs, we would look at the number of degrees conferred in different colleges and how often the resource was used on course reserves. We would also evaluate whether a publisher or vendor's practices align with the values and priorities of Western libraries, such as accessibility, open access, and user privacy. While this process supported a consistent and holistic evaluation of subscription resources, it also presented some challenges. Gathering such a wide range of data points, which had to be extracted from multiple sources, was time and labor intensive. Additionally, much of this data was tailored specifically to subscription review and couldn't easily be reused in other workflows. The process was also complicated to coordinate. It would span about 7 months and involved collaboration between multiple library units, each of which had additional work commitments and often were tied to very different work timelines. We also encountered limitations in the decision-making process. Focusing on low scoring subscriptions made it challenging to strategically evaluate high cost resources, and it tended to have a disproportionate impact on single journals and other lower cost subscriptions. We also did not have a consistent mechanism for responding to major subscription changes that took place outside of the regular review cycle, such as significant price increases, changes in subscription models, or platform changes that impacted usability and accessibility.
We had a number of goals for the revision to provide solutions to the heavy workload, and the issues we were continually seeing in the subscription review process. We wanted to save CMA's time and labor on data collection and review material preparation and give SRG more time with the data while providing effective support for decision making by liaison librarians, especially decisions about large cuts. Additionally, we recognize the need to create new workflows to fill the gaps in our current process. We plan to create a structure and timeline for investigation of alternative subscription options, implement a rapid review procedure that would allow for subscriptions with significant cost increases or other changes to undergo an out of cycle review, and implement a sustainable and strategic process for reviewing journal packages. Our revision process, we started by describing and analyzing the challenges we had identified. We knew we needed more time to revise our process than existed between one subscription review cycle and another, and managing the current workload of subscription review and the revision process would be difficult. We devised a stopgap plan for the 2024-2025 subscription review that would serve as a pilot and lighten our workload so we could complete the process. We only updated price and usage data from the prior year's scorecards, and instead of creating a list only of the lowest scoring titles, we included all subscriptions under review and displayed only price, cost per use, overlap, and the total score. Our subject librarians considered our entire subscription collection, regardless of score, which caused the discussion to be less focused on individual subscriptions and included packages and databases which typically score too high to get on the list. Additionally, our subject librarians discussed the list collectively first, rather than each subject team creating their own list of priorities separately and then trying to compromise on a list together. After the conclusion of the 2024-2025 subscription review, we surveyed our subject librarians on how they felt about the interim process, how it compared to the previous process, and how it could be improved. We also hosted several guided discussions on the subject. Based on our own experiences, research on other library subscription processes, and subject librarians, we created a thorough proposal and again shared it with SRG for feedback. It was approved after some clarification, and we set aside a few questions that could not be answered without more input from our subject librarians. We created a working group made up of CMA and SRG members to tackle these questions. We began implementing this first iteration of our revised process in May 2025.
The revisions we proposed include both adjustments to the process developed in 2020 and the addition of new workflows to address some gaps. As mentioned previously, the 2020 process consisted of CMA collecting data for 12 metrics and providing an abbreviated list of low-scoring subscriptions to the SRG. Subject teams shared that it could be difficult to contextualize the low-scoring subscriptions without seeing the whole list, and they appreciated the approach we introduced in fiscal year 25, which included the full list of subscriptions with data for fewer metrics. By scaling back the number of metrics CMA collected data for, we reduced the workload significantly, making it possible to share the list with the SRG earlier in the year and allowing for more time to review and discuss the list together. CMA also committed to providing additional data upon request for individual subscriptions that SRG members were interested in investigating in more depth. CMA can continue to collect data for any of the metrics that were previously included in the scorecards. We are also interested in identifying new metrics that may help with decision-making. For example, indexing information or historical subscription review data, such as how a subscription scored over time or qualitative feedback we received about a subscription in previous review cycles. Finally, we proposed more strategic collaboration between the subject teams and collection services around new opportunities for data collection, such as library workshop statistics and qualitative data based on discussions with departments. In addition to adjustments to the existing list-making process, we also propose new processes to try and address some of the gaps and challenges with evaluating high-cost subscriptions. Subject teams expressed that there was not a clear framework for exploring potential subscription swaps. For example, comparing a new newspaper database to our existing newspaper database subscriptions. To address this, CMA created a swap review form that libraries personnel can use to provide information about subscriptions they are interested in comparing. CMA can then incorporate the swap proposals into the annual subscription review process, and they will be included in the established decision-making procedures. Additionally, the 2020 process did not include a mechanism for evaluating and canceling a subscription outside of the annual subscription review process. This meant that we did not have clear procedures in place for responding in the moment when a renewal came in much higher than anticipated, or a significant change was made to a license, platform, or the content of the subscription. We hope to address this through a new rapid review process. We established thresholds around price increases and content modifications for renewals for journal, package, and database subscriptions. If a renewal meets or exceeds those thresholds, collections leadership will determine whether the renewal warrants an out-of-cycle rapid review. If so, a rapid review team consisting of CMA and relevant subject team librarians would convene and evaluate the resource for possible cancellation. Finally, the 2020 process did not include a clear strategy for reviewing large journal packages. CMA will now provide data on our journal packages to the subject teams 7 months before the external subscription review list is shared with the university community. The data will include title list, price, package level usage, package level cost per use, overlap with other resources, percent price increase, percent of titles used, average cost per title used, and distribution of usage across titles. We hope that this timeline and data will allow us to identify 1 to 3 packages per year that we want to investigate in earnest for potential inclusion in the year's subscription review. We are currently in the throes of this year's subscription review using the new procedures. At this point, we are deep into the data gathering and synthesizing stage and have already identified modifications we would like to make for next year. We also developed an outcomes report template, which will help us capture and archive data and documentation from all stages of the subscription review process each year. This report will make it easier to locate historical data, communications, and previous decisions when needed. Finally, we are planning to repeat the survey that we distributed to the SRG at the beginning of the revision process to help gauge whether the changes we made helped make progress towards our goals. We will continue to refine the process as necessary. Thank you for attending our presentation on developing effective and sustainable processes for routine subscription review. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments.